Hey again, my card-loving friends. So I had some change of plans this evening, and so while I have a little bit of time to myself, I decided that I wanted to look at some football cards. And I thought I would pull out my 1959 Topps football cards and show them to you, and I have an interesting piece here to go with them. But first, I have my Jim Brown, and of course, this is a fantastic card. Another fantastic card in this set is the Bart Starr. And here is Jim Parker. Jim Parker was an insanely good offensive lineman. If you watch film on him, it'll remind you of the movie The Blind Side, the way he just throws guys around. And he was a big part of the success that Johnny Unitas had. He protected this man. Great Alex Karras. Y.A. Tittle. Frank Gifford. And this is Bobby Mitchell's rookie card. And Joe Perry. Roosevelt Greer. Another good lineman for the Giants. And Joe Schmidt. Fantastic linebacker out of the University of Pittsburgh. He was a Pitt guy. And my dad always told me he was his favorite college player growing up. I guess he used to listen to the games on the radio. And that was Hopalong Cassidy. And Bobby Lane. And of course, the Steelers drafted Johnny Unitas in the 12th round and cut him. And they drafted Lenny Dawson. And when they got Bobby Lane, they let Lenny Dawson go, I think, to Cleveland. And then Cleveland let him go, and that's when Kansas City got him. Hard to believe, two teams didn't believe in him. The Steelers, Bobby Lane was known, it's kind of a joke that you didn't want him playing sober. He played better when he was drinking. I guess he drank a lot. And my dad tells me stories of there were old Steeler quarterbacks who were like out of a comedy movie, and they would drink. And he said there was one quarterback that they had, and he drank so much that one day he walked into a streetcar. Never saw it. He was so drunk. And he said he played really bad one game, and he said, that's it. That's the last game I ever play without drinking a pint before the game. Bobby Lane. My father always told me about this guy, and he said he, talent-wise, was the best defensive tackle we ever watched. But he had, I guess, a really bad heroin addiction. And he died young, and he had a short career. And that's Big Daddy Lipscomb. Of course, after he played here with the Colts, this is his rookie card. He came to Pittsburgh. And here's Gene Marchibroda. Marchibroda. That's Ted Marchibroda. He's another Pittsburgh guy. He was from Pittsburgh. And he quarterbacked the Steelers back in the 50s. I have a great card of him, too. I think I have two of them. But I digress. Gino Marchetti. Now, Gino Marchetti fought in the Battle of the Bulge. A great card. And here we have John Henry Johnson, another guy that played for the Steelers. My father told me about a game where it was just, the entire field was just mud, he said. And he said, nobody could run on it but John Henry. Nobody caught him that day. I think he had a whole bunch of touchdowns. And here's Roosevelt Greer, Rosie Greer. And when I was growing up, he was in some ads, and I'm drawing a blank. Who remembers the ads he was in? He promoted something. Rosie Greer. It's a great card. Now, this brings me to what I have over here. And this, so Topps, throughout the years, they would keep albums every year. And what they would do was they would take two cards and they would glue them into album pages, basically. One the front and one the back. And they kept a whole file. They've kept a file copy of every card they made. And I obtained the file copy for this card here. As well as Alan Amici, good running back. So that's what they would do, and they kept them in a binder. And at one time, I don't know what year, I don't know if this says, but I know back in the early 90s, when was this? And I still can't read it. Oh, it doesn't say. But back in the early 90s and throughout the 90s and into the early 2000s, I know, and probably beyond that, Topps must have just not had the space, and they started selling all their stuff through the Topps vault. And I used to buy a lot of it on eBay back in the early 2000s. And I know there were auctions in the 90s when I was younger, so I didn't even know about those at the time. But have since acquired some of the pieces from there. And they would sell, the proof cards and different things. I'm sure you've all seen and are familiar. But this is kind of a unique one. You don't see too many of these. But if you go searching, you probably can find some. I wanted to get two good players. And so I got two good players. Because a lot of them were, secondary players or players I never heard of. But really cool piece to have. And then Hugh McElhaney, I don't know, they said he was the Barry Sanders, of his day. I guess he was very, had that running style. Hard to catch. And then I have a Chicago Bears team card here. I only have one team card from the set so far. Team cards weren't something I ever really set out to get. Other than Pirates teams cards, growing up, I wanted those, and the Steelers team cards, although I don't think they had any, but if they did, from the 70s. But the older ones, I never really had an interest in. The old Steelers were really, really bad teams up until Chuck Noll took over in '69, and I think they won one game that year. Or maybe that might be the year they had a tie, because Chuck Noll had one tie. Very unusual, but he did. And then started to turn it around. And when it really turned around for the Steelers was the 1974 draft. I mean, first and foremost, getting Joe Green and getting Terry Bradshaw, even though he wasn't very good early on, that was a big deal. And then in the earlier 70s, they got Mel Blount, I think in '72. And then they got Franco Harris the following year, and just was an amazing rookie. He wasn't even supposed to be that good, as good as he ended up being right out of the gate, because he had a horrible preseason. And then in the first game, he just lit it up all year. And then in the 1974 draft, there were 5 total Hall of Famers in the 1974 draft. And 4 of them were Pittsburgh Steelers. So the one that wasn't was Dave Casper. Now, the Pittsburgh Steelers had a undrafted player, an undrafted rookie in that draft too. And he also became a Hall of Famer, which means 5 Steeler rookies from 1974, 5 became Hall of Famers. And they are Mike Webster, Lynn Swann, John Stallworth, Jack Lambert, and Donnie Shell, who I don't know if he still holds it, but at his retirement, Donnie Shell held the all-time record for interceptions by a strong safety. And he finally got into the Hall of Fame, I think, in 2020, just recently. Long overdue, but there were so many great players on that Steelers team, they didn't want to let everybody in, apparently. It took Lynn Swann a long time, even though he was absolutely the best receiver of his day. And L.C. Greenwood still isn't in. And L.C. Greenwood was an incredible defensive end. I don't know how he doesn't get in. But anyway, I have here Jack McLaren. He was an end for the Steelers. And you young people probably don't know, but they called wide receivers ends back in this time period. And Zeke Barkowski, quarterback for the Bears. Maybe he could come back and play for them. My Steelers need some serious help too. I think that's more coaching than anything, but hey, that's just a layman's opinion. What do I know? I've only been watching football for 40-some years. Okay, guys, that's what I have for you. Hey, thanks for hanging out with me.